Sometimes reading the Bible is like stepping into a different world. Then other times you realize things haven't changed all that much, like how we often struggle to live in harmony with those who are different from us. As it turns out, so did some of the earliest Christians. The first people to follow Jesus were predominantly Jewish. Then, as news about Jesus spread, more and more non-Jews, known as Gentiles, started following him too. This led to one of the first great dilemmas in the church. How can Jews and Gentiles, two groups who didn't always get along that well, worship together as equals, as members of one community? Should Gentiles be made to follow Jewish customs in order to be welcomed into the community? And what did all this mean for God's covenant, the set of promises he'd made to his chosen nation, the Jewish people? Two of Paul's letters, Galatians and Romans, tackle these questions head-on. In Galatians, Paul writes to a mostly Gentile community in what is now central Turkey. While Paul consistently taught that Gentiles didn't have to keep Jewish law in order to follow Jesus, some agitators, as he called them, had infiltrated the church in Galatia, insisting that Gentiles keep the Sabbath, eat kosher, and be circumcised. Paul would have none of it. Everyone who has faith is a child of Abraham, he argued. Circumcision or non-circumcision, it didn't matter. The church was part of God's new creation. In Romans, Paul appealed to both Jewish and Gentile Christians living in Rome, hoping they would sponsor his mission to reach Gentiles in the western half of the empire. In making his appeal, Paul argued that this new worldwide family of Jews and Gentiles was part of God's plan from the beginning. Paul also brought up the thorny question of what this meant for God's covenant with the Jews, especially given that so many had chosen not to embrace Jesus as their Messiah. And he shared practical advice on what it means to live together as one new humanity. Behind Paul's sometimes short-tempered prose in Galatians and his lofty rhetoric in Romans is a pretty simple idea. The good news about Jesus is for everyone. In the new creation Paul writes about in Galatians and Romans, the old barriers and divisions are rendered obsolete.